We all use the internet every day, so I was hoping by now, in 2024, people would have gotten over being fooled by obvious clickbait headlines time and time again, but I guess we're not there yet as a society because we just saw Ubisoft get raked over the coals because there was a minute there where every headline from every gaming outlet said Ubisoft says that gamers need to get used to not owning their games. And everyone just didn't even look into it. They just ran with the headline as the story and even contributed to all the rage that was online. And when I say everyone, I'm not talking about just people on like the likes of Reddit and Twitter. I know Twitter. I know it's X. I don't care. I'm always going to call it Twitter. But I'm talking about mainstream video game news outlets. I'm talking about content creators online. They all perpetuated and fed into this. And I get it. It's really popular to hate on Ubisoft. They're like 80% an Assassin's Creed studio at this point. And I know it was a really fun thing for a really long time to pick on them because of the tower convention that they used as a mechanic in most of their video games. Assassin's Creed? Towers. The Far Cry games?
Towers.
And The Crew. Wait, isn't that a racing game?
Towers.
And the criticism wasn't wrong. Of course, they had that in everything for a really, really long time. They've pulled away from it for a little bit. But like, I don't understand what people thought actually happened. Did people see that headline and think that there was a Ubisoft representative sitting down and they just decided to blurt this out? I mean, I guess it's kind of a silly question because there have been some pretty big blunders from people who are supposed to be representing a big company in the past before when it comes to video games. But what did people really think happened? Gamers can be as concerned as they would like to be. We don't care. We are coming for them. There's nothing they can do about it. They enjoy our products too much, you see. We're coming for their money. We're coming for their wallets. We're coming from their bank accounts, and we're coming for their tax returns. Every single dollar, every single quarter, every dime, every nickel, every penny. We are coming for it. That's right. We are in the business not of providing products and services for people who want to care about our brand and the things that we make. No. We are here solely for the purpose of making money. So why provide anything if we don't have to? Let's instead give them the illusion, sell them the illusion that they're getting something even though we're giving them nothing. That's right. Gamers, get used to not owning your games. No, that's not what happened. Of course, that's not what happened. You don't have someone from Ubisoft just sitting there with a devilish smile on their face, rubbing their mustache between their fingertips like an evil Bond villain. Like that's not a thing, right? Okay. What happened is that the statement was taken out of context. The conversation was happening with the director of subscriptions at Ubisoft, and they were talking about subscriptions in the gaming space, okay? And relating to that, they were basically saying through all the PR speak that subscription models aren't exactly where everyone who doesn't follow this sort of thing probably believes they are. They're not this great big driver in the industry right now. They have seen some growth, so they do see some utility in offering that service to gamers, right? And obviously, it's a good deal for gamers who want to subscribe to something and have access to a library of games. And the reason why they're having this conversation openly in the first place is because Ubisoft has something of their own called Ubisoft Plus. But they were saying that you're never going to see these subscription services really blow up in a meaningful way in this industry until there's a shift with the consumer. The same shift that we've already seen with music, that we've already seen with movies. And they cited this as an example in the conversation because when it comes to music, people are content not having CDs or records anymore. They're content subscribing to the likes of Spotify. When it comes to movies, it's the same thing. They don't want to clutter their shelves with DVDs and Blu-rays. They are content with the likes of Netflix and Max and Disney Plus and whatever. But that shift has not happened yet with consumers when it comes to video games, be it physical copies or digital copies. There's still a very strong preference from gamers overall to want to own the video games that they're playing. And I'm sorry, I hate to be the odd one out here, I guess, since all of the internet seems to agree that this was a horrible statement, but there's nothing factually wrong with what they said. To sit there and say that we're not going to see these business models really blow up and be as powerful in the industry as something like a Disney Plus or a Spotify or a Netflix, you're not going to see that happen until gamers get used to not owning their games. That's 100% factual. It is accurate, and it's not evil. It wasn't said with like a wink and a nod, like, you just wait for things to come. Now, with that said, what I think is most interesting of all, because I'm not just here to like defend Ubisoft because everybody dogpiled on this person for something that was taken out of context, although I would like to see a lot less of that in the future. The most interesting part of all of this to me was what wasn't being said, right? Because, this person kind of dances around the fact that like gamers haven't made the shift to be comfortable with not owning their entertainment in the gaming sphere, right? But for me, the question is, why is that? Why have consumers been so readily eager to jump into subscription models with music and movies, but not video games? And I think that part of the conversation wasn't really being had because the answer to me is fairly obvious, and that it's video gamers do not trust companies in the video game industry. They just give them no chance to do so. On Xbox, for example, there are some games that are really not that old that you can't purchase anymore due to licensing agreements, right? Some of the older Forza Horizon games, like I'm talking Forza Horizon 2, I believe Forza Horizon 3, you can't buy anymore digitally. Your only chance at being able to play those games these days is by owning the actual disc and then popping it into an Xbox. That is, if you bought an Xbox that has a disc drive these days, because the Xbox Series X may have one, but the Xbox Series S does not. Nintendo is another one. Just in a few months, they're going to be shutting down all the online stuff for the 3DS and the Wii U, which is scary because that is just Nintendo's last generation of machines. And how about Sony? Like, they've done shady stuff like this in the past too. Like during the PlayStation 3 era, multiplayer was free. You didn't have to spend $60 a year just to be able to play online with your friends. But when the PS4 was unveiled, they knew that they had you. They wanted some of that Microsoft money that they were getting with that Xbox Live Gold stuff. So they decided we're going to put multiplayer behind a paywall as well. $60, cough it up. But in order to ease the pain and to lube things up a little bit for you so it doesn't hurt so much when we screw you, we're going to offer you a free copy of Drive Club as long as you subscribe to PS Plus. It's going to be our marquee racing game for the PlayStation 4 early on in the life cycle of this thing. And if you subscribe to PS Plus, you're going to get that as a benefit. And then everybody buys a PS4, they subscribe to PS Plus, and then they don't really deliver. It's quite a while before some sort of iteration that's quote unquote free to people of Drive Club gets delivered. And when it does, it ends up being like a truncated version of the game. So they lied to you. And this sort of stuff happens in the industry all the time. So it's really no wonder that consumers do not trust anyone in this industry, because it's very clear that they're always chasing after the dollar and really not considering the actual quality of the products that they're delivering. I mean, we see it with day one releases all the time, how buggy and broken these games often are, just because despite the fact that these companies know the games are buggy and broken, they push them out anyway to appease their shareholders. So in that respect, if the industry is not intending to show some loyalty, to try and gain goodwill from gamers, and this is something that takes a long time too. It's not something that can just happen overnight. So if they want subscription-based models to become a thing, they're really going to have to learn to start treating their customers right, doing the right things, releasing games when they're ready, as opposed to just releasing them because they have people to appease financially. because that's the only way that they're going to get any really meaningful growth out of all of this. Now, with all of that said, I don't want to see growth in the subscription market. I have said on this channel time and time again that really Microsoft has the best deal in gaming with Game Pass. But despite that, while it's great for consumers, it's not good for anyone in the industry. People are always looking at Microsoft, like I'm talking about other companies in the gaming industry. They're looking at Microsoft and they're saying to themselves, how the heck are you even profitable at this point? You have all of these games on this library, the licensing to have that on your platform. Boy, I mean, you have to be paying through the nose for that, not to mention all the money that it costs in order to distribute this content to people on demand. And not only does that cost money, but you're putting all your first party games on this thing day one. So how many sales are you losing from video games just to appease your Game Pass subscription service? And you know, all the third company parties out there, they're not looking to lose money on game sales, especially on day one and in the months following a launch of a video game that they spent years and lots of money on to develop. No, nobody is banging on Microsoft's door and being like, yeah, you got to put our major expensive AAA game on Game Pass on day one. It just doesn't happen. They milk everything out of their games that they can after they launch. And then, you know, they'll start putting the game on sale and they'll try and extract even more money that way. And then once the game's been out for a bit, maybe then they'll make a deal with Microsoft to be like, okay, you can give us a lump sum. We're not really making money off of this anymore. You just pay us off and then we'll let you have the game on your service for a while. That's what happens. And nobody in the industry sees this as like an ideal sort of a thing. So they're just getting their feet wet. They're getting in there in case the consumers like shift at some point. But based on that conversation about trust, it's for that reason that I don't trust these companies, right? Like I love the products that they make, but come on. You can't trust these companies, and I certainly don't. So I really hope that the subscription model thing doesn't ever really take off. I hope that it just kind of remains like an option that's floated out there for people who want to take advantage of it. I want there to be just enough growth so that's maintained, but that ownership is the primary means for delivery as far as video game content is concerned. Because if subscriptions ever really do become super important, you're going to see the same thing happen with these subscription models as you've seen with the likes of Disney Plus and all those other services when it comes to movies. You're going to see them leave heavily into this and try and leverage these platforms into the primary delivery model, which means you might end up being stuck subscribing in order to play your games. And you might not have an option and I'm not talking about in like the next couple few years. This is something that's going to have to take a really long time in order to sort of transition and shift. But if it happens, it's not going to be good for us. And if the day ever comes where I can't buy a video game, even digitally, and own it, then I'm just not going to be a gamer anymore. Well, I will. I'll just play older games. I'm not going to feed into the newer stuff that comes out. So I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to follow this story moving forward. If this director of subscriptions at Ubisoft sits down for another interview again or gives some other statement in the future, I really would be interested to see someone ask this person, well, why do you think that is? And I don't know why this question wasn't asked there, but I want to see someone ask this person, well, why do you think that consumers aren't making that shift? This person in that interview, in that statement, did sort of allude to something, right? They're like, it's strictly about game ownership. It's not about other things that they're concerned about, right? Like if you have their save files and you keep them on the platform, like, and that stuff doesn't go anywhere, like they're not being impacted in that respect. So like it really just comes down to game ownership, and they're worried about that to some degree. But why? Where's the follow-up question? Why do you see that as being a thing? I want to see an answer to that. I want to hear their take on why they feel like they're losing out here. Because again, gamers don't trust the video game industry. And there have been plenty of companies that have acted like the good guys at one point, but they've fallen. Just take a look at what happened to CD Projekt Red. They gained so much goodwill with the launch of The Witcher 3. At launch, it was a bit buggy, yes, but the game was playable. Over the course of time, they did a lot of quality of life improvements to the game. They released a pretty substantial amount of DLC for the game for free. And then when they did release content that was to be sold for real world money. It wasn't just like these little gimmicky microtransactions, these little costumes that your character can wear in game. It wasn't skins or anything like that. It was actually big, beefy expansions that sold for a really reasonable price. So when they were making Cyberpunk 2077, all eyes were on CD Projekt Red, and they were like, we are going to get an amazing product here. And well, we saw how far the mighty had fallen with that one. And then, of course, there's Microsoft, like they had us with the Xbox 360. They destroyed everything with the announcement of the Xbox One because that was a disaster. And then they spent an entire generation and a half trying to gain so much goodwill. And then we had this news come out that they're going to try and get rid of Game Pass Gold, the base model for $60 a year for multiplayer access. And they were going to force everyone to go into Game Pass, which meant you were going to spend at least $120 a year, making you pay double the price every single year just for multiplayer access. Forget about the games. Not everybody cares about that library of games that are in the subscription. They just want multiplayer. So I'll be following this, and if there's anything to add in the future, if this director of subscriptions at Ubisoft has anything else to say, I'll talk about it here. If you like this content, please remember to like the video, follow the channel here on YouTube, subscribe, and then of course, if you want to talk about things live, I am live on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Link for that stuff is down in the description below. Take care of yourselves, everyone.